I spawn into the game, expecting the usual Roblox experience where somebody immediately walks up wearing an outfit that costs more Robux than my entire inventory combined. But instead, I'm greeted by a city that looks like somebody handed the developers a copy of Solo Leveling and told them to treat every frame like it owed them money. The lighting is dramatic, the buildings have enough detail to make my computer briefly question its career choices, and before I even move 10 feet, there's already another player sprinting past me with glowing daggers, an army of shadows following behind him, like he accidentally became the coolest guy in the lobby. Meanwhile, I look like I just filled out an application to become an adventurer 5 minutes ago. This is the type of game that immediately reminds you where you stand on the food chain. I'm not the main character. I'm background decoration with a health bar. Every experienced player flying through the streets has enough power to accidentally erase me from existence by sneezing too aggressively in my direction. The game wastes absolutely no time introducing you to its progression system either. Every menu I open has another menu hiding behind it, like some kind of Russian nesting doll designed by somebody who thinks organization is optional. Stats, skills, weapons, quests, inventory, titles, upgrades, artifacts, and enough numbers flying across my screen to convince a mathematician they've accidentally booted up an accounting simulator instead of a Roblox game. Somehow it works though. Instead of feeling overwhelming, it feels like opening a Christmas present, where every layer of wrapping paper hides another present. Every button I press unlocks something else for me to obsess over. Then comes the first dungeon. Every Solo Leveling fan knows the dungeons are where everything starts getting interesting, and this game clearly understood the assignment because the atmosphere changes immediately. The music shifts, the lighting gets darker, and suddenly every enemy inside looks at me like I personally insulted their entire bloodline. I swing my weapon with all the confidence of somebody who definitely knows what they're doing despite having absolutely no clue what any of these abilities actually accomplish. Somehow everything dies anyway. Either I'm secretly incredible, or the tutorial monsters have accepted they're contractually obligated to lose. I'm leaning toward the second option. The combat feels surprisingly smooth. Instead of clicking once every 3 business days waiting for animations to finish, every attack flows together. Dodging matters, positioning matters, timing matters. Of course, none of that stops me from face-tanking attacks because apparently my strategy consists entirely of optimistic aggression. If confidence dealt damage, I'd already be max level. Every enemy drops something shiny because apparently the developers understand that human brains are simple creatures. You throw enough glowing loot on the ground and suddenly I'm vacuuming everything into my inventory like a raccoon discovering an unattended buffet. The progression loop starts sinking its claws into me almost immediately. Finish quest, get stronger, unlock skill, fight harder enemies. Repeat until daylight disappears and your family starts wondering if you've joined a secret organization. Every level feels meaningful because every upgrade visibly changes how powerful you become. Numbers start climbing faster than my expectations. My attacks become flashier, my movement becomes smoother. Enemies that originally treated me like a chew toy suddenly become warm-up exercises. That tiny taste of power is exactly how these games trap you. You're never satisfied because there's always another player standing nearby whose damage numbers require scientific notation. Naturally, I decide I need whatever they're using. I inspect their gear expecting maybe one impressive weapon. Instead, their inventory looks like they robbed an entire endgame raid. Every item glows. Every title sounds terrifying. Every cosmetic screams, I've forgotten what grass looks like. Respect. I accept the challenge. The quests keep pushing me towards stronger areas, and every new location somehow manages to look even cooler than the last. Forests filled with oversized monsters, ruined cities crawling with enemies, mysterious castles that definitely violate several building safety regulations. Everywhere I go, there's another boss waiting with enough health to qualify as a geological formation. Boss fights are where the game really starts flexing. Massive attack patterns fill the screen. Explosions erupt everywhere. Giant swords come crashing down from the sky. Laser beams appear because apparently fantasy worlds are legally required to include lasers now. I'm rolling around trying not to become part of the scenery while wondering how players are somehow defeating these things in under 30 seconds. Then I remember they've probably spent the last 6 months perfecting their builds while I still occasionally press the wrong key trying to open my inventory. Skill issue confirmed. One thing I immediately appreciate is how alive the servers feel. There's always somebody grinding, somebody trading, somebody asking questions in chat that absolutely nobody answers because everyone's too busy farming legendary drops. Occasionally somebody with enough power to bench press a skyscraper walks into the dungeon entrance, vaporizes everything before I even reach the first room, then disappears without saying a single word. It's like witnessing an urban legend. They arrive, they delete reality, they leave. Beautiful efficiency. Eventually I unlock stronger abilities and this is where the power fantasy really kicks into overdrive. Suddenly, I'm dashing around enemies instead of awkwardly jogging toward them. My attacks explode across the battlefield with satisfying effects. Damage numbers start multiplying until the screen resembles somebody dumping an entire calculator onto my monitor. There's something deeply satisfying about returning to areas that previously destroyed me and casually clearing them without losing health. Revenge tastes significantly better when accompanied by increasingly ridiculous particle effects. Then I noticed the ranking systems. This is dangerous territory because leaderboards have a supernatural ability to convince otherwise rational people to spend 12 consecutive hours doing the same activity. I look at the top players and immediately understand they've ascended beyond normal human concepts like sleep and hydration. Their levels are astronomical. Their gear borders on mythical. Their names appear everywhere. It's equal parts inspiring and deeply concerning. Naturally, I decide I belong up there despite having absolutely no evidence supporting this belief. Every grind session becomes slightly longer. One more dungeon turns into 5. 5 becomes 10. 10 becomes, wait, why is the sun coming up? Somewhere along the way, I stop questioning it. The game successfully rewires my brain until obtaining a slightly stronger weapon becomes today's greatest achievement. Every rare drop creates enough dopamine to power a small city. Every failed attempt convinces me the next run will definitely be the lucky one. It never is until suddenly it is. And now, I'm yelling at my monitor, because a glowing sword finally appeared after enough attempts to qualify as emotional endurance training. The developers absolutely understand how to manipulate player motivation in the funniest way possible. Every time I think I'm approaching the endgame, another system unlocks. More upgrades, more abilities, more progression, more excuses to keep playing. It's like climbing a mountain only to discover it was sitting on top of another mountain. Eventually I start noticing my character actually looking intimidating. Gone is the random rookie who spawned into the lobby looking like he borrowed equipment from the tutorial NPC. Now I've got glowing effects, stronger armor, better weapons, and enough confidence to challenge enemies that would have flattened me an hour ago. That transformation feels earned because every improvement came from actually playing. It scratches the same itch that made solo leveling itself so satisfying. Watching gradual growth feels infinitely more rewarding than being overpowered from the beginning. Even the smaller moments become memorable. Random players inviting me into parties, watching entire groups coordinate against giant bosses. Everybody rushing toward world events the second they appear, seeing dozens of abilities lighting up the battlefield simultaneously until my graphics card quietly files a complaint. It's chaotic in the best possible way. Every session creates another story. Sometimes it's finally getting the drop I've wanted all day. Sometimes it's accidentally walking into an enemy that introduces me to the respawn screen at terminal velocity. Sometimes it's spending 15 minutes optimizing a build only to immediately realize I somehow made myself weaker. Character development isn't always linear. The funniest part is how quickly my standards change. At the beginning, I celebrated every level. Later, I'm disappointed if I don't gain several during one farming session. Early weapons felt incredible. Now I dismantle them without hesitation because I've become a loot snob. That's how progression systems quietly reshape expectations. Yesterday's treasure becomes today's inventory clutter. Before long, I'm chasing increasingly impossible upgrades because normal improvement no longer satisfies me. Somewhere out there, another player has a stronger build, and apparently that's become my personal villain origin story. Every successful dungeon run feeds that obsession a little more. Every new ability unlock reminds me there's still another milestone waiting ahead. The pacing keeps dangling another objective in front of me without making the grind feel meaningless. Even repetitive farming sessions stay entertaining because combat remains satisfying. Smashing through hordes of enemies with increasingly ridiculous attacks never really gets old when everything explodes into experience points and loot afterward. Eventually, I find myself standing back in the main city after hours of non-stop grinding. Players are everywhere, showing off gear that ranges from respectable to completely absurd. New players spawn in looking exactly like I did earlier, cautiously exploring while staring at veterans with equal parts admiration and confusion. I finally understand what those high-level players look like from the other side. I'm nowhere near the strongest person in the server, but I'm definitely no longer the guy getting bullied by tutorial monsters. That's one of the biggest strengths of this Roblox adaptation. It captures the feeling of constant progression. Every session leaves you stronger than when you logged in. Every upgrade feels tangible. Every challenge pushes you toward the next reward. It nails the addictive cycle of becoming stronger without making the journey feel empty. I load into one last dungeon before telling myself I'll log off afterward, which is the oldest lie in gaming history. One boss becomes another dungeon. Another dungeon becomes another upgrade. Another upgrade becomes another reason to keep playing. At this point, the game has successfully convinced me that sleep is a side quest, while legendary loot is the main storyline. Hours disappear without permission. My inventory fills with enough equipment to open a medieval department store. And somehow I still convince myself there's one more thing worth grinding before I leave. The scary part is I genuinely believe it every single time. Hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you are, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps out a ton. And if you've been grinding this game yourself, let me know your current level and the strongest boss you've managed to beat, because I already know somebody's about to casually tell me they soloed an endgame raid while I was busy celebrating a weapon upgrade that probably gets replaced in the next 20 minutes. Anyway, back to the grind. At this point, I've accepted that this game has completely hijacked my schedule. Every objective I complete immediately creates 2 more objectives, and somehow my brain treats that as fantastic news instead of a warning sign. I finish upgrading one skill, then notice another ability sitting there with a tiny lock icon, practically laughing at me. The game knows exactly what it's doing. It keeps dangling another milestone right in front of you, close enough to feel attainable, but far enough away that you'll happily spend another hour chasing it. Before long, I'm running through dungeons with far more confidence than I had earlier. Whether that confidence is deserved is a completely different discussion. Sometimes I walk into a room full of enemies thinking I'm unstoppable, and 5 seconds later I'm sprinting in the opposite direction, because apparently confidence doesn't increase your defense stat. The enemies in these later areas are significantly less interested in giving second chances. They hit harder, move faster, and somehow always manage to attack at the exact moment I convince myself they're about to miss. Whoever programmed these things clearly took offense to players having fun. Every fight feels like a small exam where forgetting one dodge results in my health bar evaporating faster than my motivation to read a game's tutorial. Eventually, I stop relying purely on bigger numbers and start paying attention to how my build actually works. Suddenly, every piece of gear matters. One weapon boosts critical damage, another increases attack speed. One accessory helps survivability, while another exists purely to turn enemies into decorative confetti. Instead of equipping whatever has the biggest number beside it, I'm standing in my inventory comparing percentages like I'm reviewing financial investments. Somewhere along the line, I accidentally became one of those players who spends almost as much time preparing for combat as participating in it. Then the testing begins. I jump back into another dungeon to see whether my changes were genius or completely unnecessary. The first few enemies disappear almost instantly, and for a brief moment I feel like I've unlocked forbidden knowledge. Then the boss arrives and immediately reminds me that being overprepared for normal enemies doesn't automatically translate into surviving a giant monster swinging a sword the size of a bus. The boss fights never stop looking impressive. Every arena feels designed to make you pay attention. Massive attacks cover huge sections of the floor, forcing you to stay alert instead of standing in one spot mashing buttons. There's something satisfying about slowly learning the attack patterns. The first attempt is usually chaos, the second feels manageable. By the third, I'm moving around like I planned the encounter myself. Then a brand new mechanic appears out of nowhere and humbles me all over again. That's become the theme of this entire experience. Every time I think I've figured everything out, the game politely informs me that I absolutely have not. The multiplayer aspect keeps making these moments even better. You'll run into random players who clearly know exactly what they're doing, and watching them fight almost feels educational. They weave around attacks without taking damage, chain abilities together perfectly, and somehow finish encounters twice as fast as everyone else. Naturally, I try copying what they're doing, only to realize that watching somebody perform perfectly and performing perfectly yourself are two completely different activities. My first attempt usually ends with me rolling directly into danger instead of away from it. Progress is progress, even if it occasionally involves embarrassing myself in front of complete strangers. The world itself keeps encouraging exploration too. Every corner feels like it might hide another quest, another powerful enemy, or another opportunity to collect resources for upgrades. I tell myself I'm heading toward one objective, then get distracted by something glowing off in the distance. 5 minutes later, I've completely forgotten where I originally intended to go. Somehow that detour ends with another level, another piece of equipment, and another reason to continue wandering around. The pacing never feels stale, because there's always something competing for your attention. 1 minute you're clearing quests, the next you're hunting rare enemies. Then you're back in town upgrading gear before heading into another dungeon, because standing still for longer than 30 seconds apparently isn't allowed. My inventory has also reached the point where finding anything requires the organizational skills of a warehouse manager. I swear I picked up one material 10 minutes ago, but now it's buried somewhere beneath enough crafting items to supply an entire guild. Every successful run leaves me richer, stronger, and somehow even worse at keeping my inventory clean. That's tomorrow's problem. Right now, the only thing that matters is getting stronger. The funniest realization is how different the game feels compared to when I first logged in. Earlier, I was cautiously approaching every enemy. Now I'm charging directly into groups because I know my abilities are capable of handling them. That sense of growth is what keeps the gameplay satisfying. The game constantly reminds you how far you've come without needing a giant cutscene or dramatic speech. You simply remember struggling against enemies that now disappear before they even finish attacking. That's the kind of progression that feels rewarding because you experience every step yourself. Even after several hours, I still catch myself spotting players with gear I've never seen before. Somebody always has a cooler weapon, a stronger title, or an ability effect that fills half the screen with enough visual effects to briefly convince me my graphics settings changed on their own. Instead of making my progress feel insignificant, it gives me another target to work toward. There's always another goal waiting, another upgrade hiding behind another challenge. That's the loop this game keeps repeating, and somehow it stays entertaining every single time. So naturally, instead of logging off like I promised myself an hour ago, I'm already walking toward another dungeon entrance. There's another boss waiting, another upgrade sitting somewhere in the loot table, and knowing my luck, it'll probably take several attempts before I finally get it. Somehow, that doesn't sound frustrating anymore. It sounds like exactly what I wanted to do when I opened the game in the first place.
If you're still watching, you're officially part of the grind. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because there are plenty more Roblox videos on the way. Drop a like if you've enjoyed the video so far, and tell me down in the comments what rank you are right now. I want to know whether you're still working through the early game like I was, or if you're one of those absolute monsters walking around with enough power to accidentally turn a boss fight into a loading screen. Now, where were we? Right, another dungeon. At this point, I'm convinced my character has forgotten what daylight looks like, because every 5 minutes we're climbing into another gate looking for stronger enemies. I don't even hesitate anymore. Earlier in the session, I was carefully checking my health before every fight. Now, I'm sprinting into rooms full of monsters like I own the place. It's amazing what a few upgrades do for your confidence. Whether that confidence is deserved is another story entirely. The first wave goes down almost instantly. My abilities chain together far more smoothly than they did at the start of the game, and I'm finally reaching the point where muscle memory is taking over. Instead of staring at my hotbar trying to remember which button activates which skill, everything happens automatically. Dash, slash, ability, dodge, another ability. Suddenly the entire room is empty except for loot scattered across the floor. It feels satisfying every single time. There's something about watching dozens of enemies disappear in a matter of seconds that never gets old. The developers definitely understood the assignment when they built the combat, because every successful combo feels rewarding without becoming completely brainless. You still have to pay attention, you still have to react, you still have to respect stronger enemies, because the moment you stop paying attention, the game politely reminds you that respawn buttons exist for a reason. Then I notice another player enter the dungeon. They're carrying weapons I've never seen before, wearing armor that looks like it was forged inside a collapsing star, and they immediately sprint past me without saying a word. I figure I'll follow them, because that seems like the safest career decision I've made all day. Watching somebody with an optimized build clear enemies is honestly entertaining by itself. They're moving so efficiently that it almost looks rehearsed. Every attack lands exactly where it needs to. Every dodge happens at the perfect moment. Meanwhile, I'm about 3 steps behind trying to convince myself I totally meant to miss that ability. Somehow, I still contribute enough damage to avoid feeling completely useless, so I'll take that as a victory. The deeper we get into the dungeon, the stronger everything becomes. Regular enemies start surviving longer than usual, forcing me to think about positioning instead of blindly charging forward. That's one thing I appreciate about the progression. Bigger numbers help, but eventually the game expects you to improve as a player too. Timing starts mattering more. Cooldown management becomes important. Suddenly I'm saving certain abilities for larger groups instead of using everything the second it comes off cooldown. It's a small adjustment, but it completely changes the flow of combat. Instead of chaos, every encounter starts feeling controlled. At least until I accidentally attract 3 extra enemies, because apparently spatial awareness is still optional in my gameplay. Eventually we reach another boss arena, and this thing looks like it skipped every phase of moderation. It's enormous. Every attack shakes the entire arena, and I'm already preparing my apology to my health bar. The fight starts, and immediately the boss decides personal space is a myth. Giant swings, shockwaves, projectiles, everything starts flying around the room at once. My screen becomes a festival of particle effects, damage numbers, and increasingly urgent attempts to stay alive. Somehow I'm still standing. Barely. The boss drops below half health, then immediately unlocks another attack pattern, because apparently surviving the first phase wasn't stressful enough. The arena lights up with warning indicators. Everybody scatters in different directions, and for one glorious moment, I actually dodge everything correctly. I don't know how I did it. I don't think my character knows how I did it. We're both equally surprised. When the boss finally falls, the reward explosion almost deserves its own celebration. Experience pours in. Materials drop everywhere. Equipment starts filling my inventory again. This is the part of the game that keeps pulling me back. Every difficult fight ends with tangible progress. Even if I don't get the exact item I wanted, I still walk away stronger than I was before entering. That's a loot that's incredibly hard to walk away from. Back in the hub, I spend several minutes comparing equipment because apparently choosing between 2 nearly identical items has become a major life decision. This one gives slightly higher attack. That one offers better critical chance. Another improves cooldown reduction. Suddenly I'm doing mental math inside Roblox. Nobody warned me this game would turn me into an accountant. After enough comparisons, I settle on a new build and immediately convince myself I've made the correct choice despite having absolutely no evidence. Time to test it. The next dungeon feels completely different. My attacks hit harder. Enemies fall faster. Bosses lose larger chunks of health with every combo. Either my build genuinely improved, or I've entered the placebo phase of character optimization. Honestly, I don't care which one it is, because everything feels stronger. And that's enough for me. Then another system catches my attention. Crafting. Of course there's crafting. Why wouldn't there be? I've apparently collected enough materials throughout the session to open a small hardware store without realizing it. Half my inventory consists of items I picked up because they were shiny. Now I'm finally discovering they all serve a purpose. I start upgrading equipment, combining materials, and watching my stats climb even further. Every successful upgrade feels like another step toward becoming one of those ridiculously powerful players I kept seeing earlier. Of course, upgrades aren't always guaranteed. The game introduces that familiar moment where success isn't automatic anymore. Suddenly, every attempt comes with a little bit of suspense. Will it work? Will I need more materials? Am I about to spend another hour farming because I was one resource short? The answer, unsurprisingly, is yes. Back into the dungeon we go. At this point, I've accepted farming as part of my daily routine. Instead of viewing it as repetitive, I start treating every run like an opportunity to improve execution, clear rooms faster, take less damage, optimize movement, finish objectives more efficiently. It's surprisingly satisfying seeing those improvements happen naturally over time. Earlier I would have needed several minutes to finish these areas. Now I'm cutting through them significantly faster without even realizing it. Another thing I keep appreciating is how active the servers remain. There's always somebody asking for teammates. Somebody's showing off a rare weapon in chat. Another player announces they finally got a legendary drop after what sounds like an emotional marathon. Then somebody else casually replies they got the same item on their second attempt. That's the kind of sentence capable of starting an international incident. World events begin appearing while I'm grinding, and naturally, everyone drops whatever they're doing to participate. Players flood toward the event location from every direction. It's honestly fun watching an entire server suddenly unite against one objective. Massive bosses surrounded by dozens of players create absolute chaos, but it's entertaining chaos. Abilities fill the screen from every angle. Shadows, explosions, glowing swords, giant attacks. Everything overlaps until I briefly lose sight of my own character. Somehow, I still manage to contribute enough damage to earn rewards, and that's all that matters. The funniest realization is how my goals keep changing. Earlier I wanted to survive, then I wanted better gear. After that I wanted higher damage. Now I'm chasing tiny percentage increases because my standards have become completely unreasonable. A 2% improvement suddenly feels enormous. That's how you know the progression system has completely taken over your brain. I also keep noticing little details scattered throughout the world. Different environments have their own personality. Enemy designs become more intimidating as you move into harder regions. Even the music shifts enough to make every location feel distinct. It's clear, a lot of attention went into making progression feel like an actual journey instead of a series of disconnected arenas. Hours have passed at this point, but it honestly doesn't feel like it. That's usually a dangerous sign. Games only manage to erase your sense of time when the gameplay loop clicks perfectly, and this one definitely has. Every completed objective feeds directly into another objective without making it feel forced. There's always another skill to unlock, another dungeon to conquer, another weapon to chase, another boss waiting to test whether your latest upgrades were worth the effort. Eventually, I catch myself standing beside players who completely dwarf my current power level, and instead of feeling discouraged, I feel motivated. Earlier they looked unreachable. Now they simply look like the next destination. Every upgrade pushes me a little closer. Every dungeon clears another obstacle. Every boss defeated checks another box on the list. So I head toward another gate without even thinking twice. My inventory is stocked. My abilities are ready. My build feels stronger than ever. Somewhere behind that portal is another challenge, another chance at rare loot, and another opportunity to see whether all this grinding has paid off. If the last few hours have taught me anything, it's that every time I think I've reached a stopping point, this game quietly hands me another reason to keep going. And honestly, I'm perfectly fine with that, because every new dungeon still feels like it has the potential to surprise me. That's exactly the feeling you want from a progression game, and right now, I don't see myself logging off anytime soon.